What is up, YouTube? It's Edward here, and we are talking about Halo Season 1 today. Today, we're going to talk about basically, I feel like what they should have done with the show. So, if you watch any of my other review videos, you will probably know that I was not a crazy fan about this show. Like, I personally think it was a huge miss. There was a lot of things that the writers just went too rogue on, and they just kind of crapped on themselves, and they just they just I feel like they just had no idea what they're doing. They wanted to insert so much of their own creativity and their own kind of you know twists and write their own story and uniqueness that they kind of steered way too far away from the original source material. Now, I'm not saying that they need to go one for one with the source material, but I think in terms of what they did, it was to the point where like you just had no idea what was going on anymore. Like at this point, it's not even Halo. It's like another story, completely other story with like Halo lookalikes. It's just something that it's like an imitation crab type of situation. But anyway, so this is what in terms of all my criticisms. I think what they could have done that was a little bit better, even if they wanted to, just say, I understand that they want to build a background, right? They need to build characters, they need to build a story so that people get invested and want to, and especially for new viewers, right? People who haven't played the video games who are like, hey, this looks interesting, like let's see what's up. They need to be able to get hooked onto the characters and the story without having to play the video games, without having to read the books and whatnot. So I get it. Like they need to build this universe from the ground up because while most people have probably heard of Halo, or at least a lot of people, maybe not most, they have no idea what it's about. Most maybe if they just heard the game, they're like, oh yeah, there's a video game, right? Cool. Like, but they have never, maybe they've seen like one picture of Master Chief, right? Like, so, and I get it. So they have to build all that. But I think where they really took a miss is really the overall story and the settings of the story. Like I'm saying, like more than half of the episodes are just on Reach, not very interesting. And then the other parts are on Madrigal, where we don't really care about what happens to Madrigal, and the whole Quan Ha storyline is just honestly not that interesting. It's just not a big deal. And so I feel like they just took too long to develop a lot of the characters. It was only 9 episodes, so it's not like you have like a 20 episode season where you can you can kind of drag this out a little longer and like show more stuff. But in 9 episodes, like you need to condense a lot, and I feel like there's so much of it just dragged out for so long that it just wasn't worth it anymore. I think what they could have done is basically, I think they could have still went with the whole we're discovering Forerunner technology story, but I think what should have happened was that I would say the 2 settings that this should have been was Madrigal and Reach. That's it. You don't need the asteroid planet thing, colony, whatever that is. And maybe a little bit of the Sangheli homeworld, or the Covenant homeworld of Sanghelios, but that's it. Like you only need those 2 places. And here's what they should have done. I would say in episode 1, they still do the whole like introduction to Madrigal and the artifact, and also Master Chief and Silver Team jumping onto Madrigal to attempt to save those humans. But I think what should have happened was, okay, that event still happens, but what happens after that changes dramatically. Instead of just a small team of Covenant of elites invading Madrigal, I wish it was the like a one Covenant fleet. Maybe not, obviously not the entire Covenant civilization, but just like one of their fleets, right? One of like the I don't remember what the flagships are, but one of those ships that came there looking for the artifact, and then or the keystone or whatever. And then Silver Team jumps in, tries to save people, and there's still that animosity between obviously the colonists and the UNSC, but the Silver Team is basically there to save the humans. And then, but what ends up happening is, when they first discover the artifact, or maybe they don't discover it yet, is that Silver Team is stranded on Madrigal, right? Or maybe they send like one small team. They send the Pillar of Autumn. They send a small UNSC fleet, or not fleet, but like a ship to go help save Madrigal. So between a handful of Marines and Master Chief and Silver Team, now they're stuck on Madrigal. And what they also discover is that Kwan Ha, her character, instead of just caring about a crazy rebellion, she is the reclaimer. She is the one human that's like, supposed to be the person that can start, or that can run Forerunner technology. I think that's how her character could have been a lot more significant, and why they need to keep her alive. Like at this point, it's like it's Chief's mission, or Silver Team's mission, to keep Kwan Ha alive, and to because she's the only key to unlocking Forerunner technology at this point. So need to keep her alive, and maybe at this point they also have the Keystone. They need to take it off world and take it back to Reach. So they have it, and now they're kind of in a survival game against essentially a fleet of Covenant or whatever, right? And that's how we can see, and like instead of like big drawn out battles, we can see little skirmishes, where maybe Chief invades like a little stronghold camp or whatever, or Chief and Silver Team, and then they can do a bunch of all of the political stuff. They could do that on the back end, like we'll switch back between Madrigal and Reach. Back on Reach is where the Admiral is, where Miranda is, where Halsey is. They're kind of doing their own side story of like political struggles. They can still do the whole AI creation thing. They can still, like, while I wasn't a fan of that derivation, they can still do that without having to take Silver Team out of action, because majority of the season 1 was them just not even in their Spartan suits, just chilling, like they weren't doing anything. It's like, this is not what this whole story is about. So you should have kept Chief and the team on Madrigal. They should have obviously kept Chief's helmet on. I mean, they did it for a season and a half with Mandalorian. Like, we never saw Pedro Pascal's face for the longest time. So I don't know why Pablo Schreiber had to take his helmet off so quickly. They could have revealed his face at the end of season 1 or something, but they just shouldn't have done that. Maybe it was like in his contract. I don't know. Maybe it was in his contract that he just wanted to show his face. Or, I mean, he did say the armor and everything was like 50 pounds. So maybe he was like, dude, like, it's tough, like, being in this sucker like all day long. And I'm like, well, you signed up for it. like, I'm sorry, but like, you signed up for this. Like, I don't know what else like you are. I mean, I have no idea what it's like to be in that kind of stuff, but like, you also have stunt doubles that can, or you just have to do the voice. You don't have to be in the armor. Like, it doesn't always have to be you, but I don't know. Anyways, so that's neither here nor there. So anyways, so the team will basically be on Madrigal. They're fighting their way through Madrigal, and in between we can do like little flashbacks of each character. Like Chief like reminisces like of his time as a child. They do a little more backstory of like just who he is and like what he's about. They can kind of throw in little tidbits about like his past by how he interacts with Halsey. I think Cortana obviously should have been there already. We don't need to see the creation of her, I feel like. And then how Soren also can play into it is like he's still like the runaway the runaway Spartan or whatever. And what happens is that he's actually on Madrigal. And instead, like, he's on Madrigal because he is running still the black market ring or some kind of anti-UNSC, or like he is like the brainchild behind the anti-UNSC rebellion on Madrigal, because he hates the UNSC, right? And what I think what could have happened was like, is at one point in maybe one of the episodes, Chief and Silver Team, they run into a group of Covenant, and it looks like things get a little dire and they're like, crap, I don't know where we can survive this. And that's where Soren and his rebels come in and save Silver Team, and they're like, oh, hey. And then there's the reveal like, oh, hey, Chief, or hey, like John, like I'm back type of thing. And that's how they kind of insert Soren into the story. And then he is like the link between the Silver Team and the kind of the rebels on that planet, like how they kind of build a relationship. And it's like at this point it's like, you know what, it's no longer UNSC versus rebels, it's humanity versus Covenant. That's how they kind of get the rebels on their side so that they can go fight the Covenant. And that kind of build like a little bit more story of like what Soren was doing afterwards, like why he hates the UNSC and all that stuff, instead of just this like kind of smuggler, like kind of discount Han Solo thing going on. And so I feel like that's how they could have built that story. They could have definitely thrown in Quan Ha, where he's like, she's a reclaimer. She's reluctant to be with Chief and Silver Team because, they can still throw in the story of, oh, it's Chief that killed her mother and whatnot, and they hate the UNSC, but she's also she has to reluctantly trust them too, because the Silver Team is the only way that she will survive. And so I think they could have built more of that story within On Madrigal, where they just go from episode where they fight some stuff, they do some political stuff. Maybe they have to hide out in certain Madrigal towns, but the thing is, the town hates the UNSC, so they have to go in kind of incognito. I don't know how you would hide Spartans in that way, but like maybe I feel like you can work something out. I haven't I'm not a writer, but I feel like this could have been a little bit more interesting in terms of how they really built out this universe. And then back on Reach, you have all the political struggles again. You have the issues with Halsey and Miranda, and then you have the struggles with the UNSC leadership, and then other things. I feel like the other things they could have done, in order to build out, like Captain Keyes is also okay now. Like, his team is maybe either in orbit above Madrigal, or maybe, the Pillar of Autumn gets disabled, right? And him and his team has to go sync up with Silver Team, but also they have to fight off their own Covenant. So, and their numbers are dwindling. So, and they could have had like a third story here, or maybe they just stay in orbit and it's like, crap, like we can't go down there. We can occasionally send weapons, or like, we'll throw down like a few warthogs, or we'll try to drop in some ODST or something here and there, but we can't do it like a full-fledged invasion because we just don't have the numbers, or full-fledged like rescue team, right? So I feel like that could have been a little bit part of it. Or maybe they're in like a space battle where they're like, oh, one of the Covenant fleet ships is like hunting the Pillar of Autumn, right? And now they have to do this cat and mouse game around Madrigal, where like they can't fully leave, but they have to they can't fully leave because they still have to protect Chief, but at the same time they got to stick around, and they're like, oh crap, like the Covenant, why there's so many Covenant here, there's something on Madrigal that's like clearly more important. So maybe they could have done that. I would even suggest splitting up Silver Team in this storyline. Maybe they don't even stick together. Maybe two of them end up going back to the Pillar of Autumn and they help defend it, all right? Or maybe they split up to go gather certain items so that they can survive. That way you have kind of like two teams of two Spartans, and they're doing little separate things, and that way you make it a little more interesting. They do some sneaking around missions. I mean, you have Kai, who is a sniper. She could have done like assassination type missions or something like that, and just could have been so much more done to this. I think definitely they didn't need Maquis. Like her kind of whole storyline. I know she's like a great actress, like she's been in a lot of stuff, but like her whole storyline as like the one human for the Covenant to use reclaimer technology is just not really necessary. Like the whole reason the Covenant want to destroy humans is because the Forerunners chose the humans as their inheritors, and the chosen race to inherit their technology. So, and none of the Covenant were a part of that. So they're just pissed, and now they've brainwashed all these other races into thinking like, oh, humans are bad and we're good, and like, they made a whole religion into all of it, and now that's why they want to wipe out humanity, right? I definitely think that could have been a lot more part of it. And I think I feel like the one, maybe if they wanted to show more of the Covenant, I really think they should have introduced the character of the Arbiter, or at least like that person, or like that one elite before he became the Arbiter. So I feel like that could have been a lot more fleshed out. That would be kind of our one link to the Covenant race, but we don't see them as just like these evil aliens. We see them, we see that there is still a lot of pride and a lot of honor in the Sangheili, and maybe just not all the Covenant, because obviously the prophets are just all dicks, right? So they're just all terrible people, or terrible species. But the Sangheili themselves are actually the elites. They're very, very honorable warriors. They're like, arguably, they have great lore. If you ever watch Halo Legends, they have a lot of good stuff in there, or they just talk a lot more about the elite race. So I really like that. Anyways, so I feel like that's what they should have done with this. I mean, with the Halo series, and put the Chief and the team in a more of like a compromising situation, instead of just having it on Reach, like, I would say 80-70% of the time, where they really do nothing. Master Chief is not even in his Master Chief suit most of the series, which is a crazy thing, right? Like how can you? I mean, yeah, we see John as like it's a character, but they're just, all this stuff was just not necessary. They just did not. I think they were focused way too much on like, let's build Chief into this person, but they didn't really showcase what Chief can do. It's like, oh, he is the symbol of the UNSC, and he is gonna be like, he is the most powerful Spartan. Okay, how? We don't really see it, arguably. Like, we see it in the 2 or 3 battles of the series of the season 1, but like, I feel like that needed to be more fleshed out. We needed to flesh out more of like, oh, why is he just like a badass soldier because like he's super strong, or is he strategic? They have great fight scenes, but I feel like they could have shown more of like his bravery, of how how he's just like a little bit more strategic type of warrior, and he's not just like a brute force. Maybe show a lot more of a tactics and whatnot, but they didn't really flesh that part out. They fleshed more part about, oh yeah, I'm this like broken like super soldier who now I'm like having an emotional breakdown like every 5 seconds. Like, it was just like, well, maybe not. Okay, that's a little dramatic, but yeah, it was just wasn't. I don't think that was just they went in the right direction. So for me, I just think that overall they just went. The story just did not build upon itself. Like it at the end of the series, I just was so glad it was over. Like, it was the first time I was just like, man, I'm glad this is done. Like usually on most other TV shows, I'm like, oh, I can't wait for next season. I honestly don't care about next season. I'm still probably gonna watch it, but I'm just like, I'm not anticipating it. Well, I am anticipating it in terms of like, I wonder if there's gonna get any worse. That's how I'm anticipating it, because I still like seeing Halo visualized on the TV or on a show, but yeah, I don't know if they're gonna need. I hope they get new writers or something. I don't know if they can retcon a lot of this stuff, but yeah, I don't know how season 2 is gonna go. I mean, they've already greenlit it, so we'll see what happens. But anyways, that is my take on what should Halo have done, and let me know what your guys' thoughts are. Let me know if you like the series or not, and comment below if you think my ideas suck or they're pretty good. All right, take it easy, guys.